Okay, hello everyone. I've got Andy here with me with a lot of stories. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you very much, Tahira. Welcome, viewers. I hope you've had your breakfast or lunch or dinner. And if it is, I hope it was nice and warmed up. Tahira kindly made me a lovely piece of her birthday cake warmed up, almond in it. And I think the world always seems a little bit better once you've had a nice piece of cake. So let's begin. We'll begin on a lovely topic called Club Row Market. Now, Club Row Market, what does that conjure? Probably not a lot, really. But since I put on my glasses and I'll become Professor Andy with these glasses, I will say to you, the characters there, that's what really made it interesting. For example, my auntie said there was a man selling cucumbers down the lane, down the market. And what does he look like? I said. Oh, well, he's got a bonky nose, she said. So we began to call him Bonky Nose, who sells cucumbers down the lane. And he was friends with my brother, and he was a nice man. What made the market special was the birds. The feathered birds, and there were all kinds there, and they used to catch the wild birds off wormwood scrubs and then bring them there and sell them. All illegal, of course. There was a pub near the market called the Jack and Knaves, and that's where the sellers would go. Rumour has it that wild birds had been caught a few days before and painted yellow to look like canaries and then sold. You could buy goats there, and it was thronging with people, and I loved it there because people were selling second-hand items and you could always get a bargain there. The other place was Petticoat Lane Market. Now, Petticoat Lane Market, this is especially for Tahira and Mr. Gong, and that is to say there was an African man there. His nickname was Prince Honolulu, and this is a real person, and he claimed that he was descended from an African chief, and he used to walk about with a big top hat with a little pieces of paper stuck inside the band, and his shouting cry would be, "I got a horse, I got a horse, I got a horse," and people would come up to him and he would sell them bets, like tips for the betting, and in exchange for money he would give advice on who would win the race. And he was a lovely man, and he had feathers in his hat, and I used to like watching him. Very interesting man. Also in Petticoat Lane Market you see these people moving the plates about, selling them like this, and then shuffling cups in the air, juggling, and to get a crowd in. And it was really interesting how they got the crowd in. Also down there you could almost buy loads of things that you wouldn't really need, to be honest. So I used to drift to Club Row Market instead. Once I did the most terrible thing. Don't tell everybody, viewers, and that is we were very poor. My brother had left home, Paul, and left his records, well, his motley collection. And I thought, well, he won't be back for a while, he won't need them. And I wanted to buy a Johnny Cash record. So I went down Petticoat Lane Market and I said to this fella selling the record, "Would you buy these records off me and give me some money so I can buy the Johnny Cash record?" He said, "How many you got?" And he gave me, wasn't a lot, but it was enough to buy Johnny Cash. And I did, and I bought it. But one day my brother Paul came. He wasn't very happy with me, but we didn't fall out with each other, and that was that. The characters The characters of Whitechapel were outstanding, absolutely outstanding. There was one of them called Long John Silver that I liked. I liked looking at him because I liked the story of Long John Silver. He had a patch over his eye and he had 2 crutches and he only had 1 leg, just like Long John Silver to me, that pirate in Treasure Island. So, but some of the boys used to make fun of him and call him Long John Silver, and he didn't like it very much, and he used to wave his crutch at them. Used to stand outside Aldgate East Station on the stairs begging for money. Now, Tahira's asked me to talk today about the Jewish people, the secret of how they support one another. Why do they? What nationalities could be learnt from it? What other people could learn from it? Okay. What is all this about? Well, if you go back in the history book, like in the Torah, with the 5 books of Moses, you see that as a group, we stayed together. But please don't be misled. There were plenty of arguments, and Aaron and Moses spent a lot of time trying to sort their difficulties out. So the important thing is to remember that although we did have some unity when we left Egypt, we also had quarrels. So there still are quarrels. It would be simplistic to think that all Jews got on well with each other. Oh yeah. So what I will say is that in order for other people to understand why Jews bond with each other, is that because we have the Sabbath, and the Sabbath is a universal common denominator for all Jewish people. Even for those who are not practicing their religion, they still acknowledge that there is a Sabbath. The Sabbath starts with the candles on Friday night and ends Saturday night. We also have our religious festivals. We're coming up to the Jewish New Year, which is our holiest day, followed by Yom Kippur fast. But why do we have this binding? Perhaps we need to go back to the storybooks. If you follow the history of Jewish people, you will find that they've been under slavery for many, many times in their lives. That we were slaves to the Romans, to the Babylonians, to the Nazis, to the Greeks. We were banished from England for over 300 years. Oliver Cromwell brought us back to become moneylenders. Aaron of Lincoln donated the money, or lent the money rather, in order for Jewish people. It was Jewish money which he had, but the bricks and mortar were built for St Albans Abbey. Does that answer the question, Tahira? Or is there anything else you want to ask about that?
Yeah, it does answer the question. Yeah, thanks very much.
That's all right. My biggest, the other thing is that you will find that Jews don't often go to the police about their own people. It's because they don't want to give the Jewish name a bad reputation. My hero, so to speak, or one of the outstanding Jewish people, is Albert Einstein. He also had a wonderful sense of humour, and since I'm wearing glasses, I will dedicate my last line to him and say, he was asked, Mr. Einstein, do you ever do exercise? He said, certainly. Every morning I spend my first half an hour trying to find my glasses. Thank you very much. I hope that is a little in taste of some of the things that are rolling about in my mind.
Okay, Andy, just quickly, I know you got to rush, but just quickly, just just briefly, honest, can you tell us a secret? Jewish people are generally successful. Yeah.
Well, it's quite easy, really.
It's like,
If you think
what's the
of
trick?
yeah, well,
what are they doing right? And
yeah,
what
what are they
are other
doing?
nationalities not
I
doing?
understand.
Yeah.
Jewish people generally, years ago, historically, they came from poverty. So they were brought up to recognise that life was a struggle. That poverty meant that food could be a problem. Work was a problem. They also lived in very poor areas. Now my brother, eldest brother, is a prime example of this. What's their success? Motivation, dreams, ambitions. That nobody can take that away from anybody. Even if you was in prison, you can still have those dreams, ambitions. They can't be beaten out of you. Like for me, I always wanted to get to the countryside, even though I lived in the poor area, and I made it, and thankfully with somebody's help. So that's the first thing. And my brother left school, Howard, at 14. He left school with no qualifications. He went to one of the rough schools in Whitechapel, and he left before his CSEs, and that was the Certificate of Secondary Education. That was before the basic GCEs, or as they're known now, GCSE O-levels. He was shining shoes at 14. He went and became an apprentice hairdresser. That didn't work out. He had an allergy to the peroxide dyes. And then he went into selling cameras for a company in the West End. And that was Wallace Heaton. He worked Sunday mornings at Houndsditch Warehouse. So he was very determined that he was going to make a success of his life. From Houndsditch Warehouse, from Wallace Heaton, he migrated to Burlington Cameras in Burlington Arcade. If ever you go there, it's near Piccadilly Circus, not far from Green Park. You will find it a delight. Very, very beautiful, ornate arcade. So, all I can say is, what did he do? He copied my grandfather, who came from on a ship from Russia, from Ukraine, which was then in Russia, and went to America. He was always thinking of how to better himself, how to improve himself. Many non-Jewish people don't think like that. They give up too quickly. We had to fight, and it was an acknowledged fight, and that was all part and parcel of what we did. It was the most important thing for us to be doing that. So for Howard, he then asked my mum for help, and she had a secret bracelet which was given to her by my Uncle Jack for emergency reasons, and that bracelet was sold, and that helped him start the business in selling cameras. Let me correct you by saying that Uncle Jack wasn't pleased about this, because he'd given that bracelet to my mum for safekeeping. However, he didn't hold a grudge on it, and eventually they became friends again. Jewish people do fall out with each other, and the long-term fallouts are called a broigus, B-R-O-G-U-S. Yes, we are not immune to that. There are disputes, and if you go back in the Bible, you'll see that Moses and Aaron spent a lot of time sorting out within their disputes. What became of Howard, you might ask? Very good question, that. He then went on to establish a company called PST, which was sold to Canon, the photocopying people and the camera people, for £30 million. He was friends with Alan Sugar. He was friends with Lord Ratner of Ratner Jewellery, the one who famously said that all my jewellery, all my stuff that I sell is rubbish. The sales plummeted after that and he had to close the company up. But it didn't stop him being a millionaire. So there you go. The secret is for Jewish people, for their success, is hard work. They normally have a mother who's very supportive. They remember the tales of poverty, and many of them did. And they like to make a success of their lives. And when you think we lived in the ghettos of Russia and Poland and many other countries, we had lots of poverty. So unless you particularly like living in a poor area, certainly has its advantages with the sense of community that we had within it, then people want to go somewhere better in their life. And that's the thing, that he never gave up. He was always looking for extra ways of making a deal. He knew how to close a deal. He had a very, very good sense of humour, and I've got echoes of that. And that's the advice I give to anybody, especially any child listening to this or watching this. Think of my brother Howard. He had a stammer. Yes, he had a stammer, and he came from, difficult circumstances. My mum had medical problems, and quite often we had times when we didn't have much to eat in the house, but it never stopped him trying hard, and he would copy his signature. He would do cartoons for me. He wasn't very good at doing my English homework though. I only got 5 out of 10 for it, but maybe that's why he never passed his. He didn't want to stay for the CSCs, but he was the clown. I read his school report, and I'll leave it on that. The form teacher wrote, "Howard is the most popular boy in the class. He is the clown of the class."
Thank you so much, Andy.
It's a
really
pleasure.
Much appreciated.
Well, that's
Thank
all
you.
right. I hope it does something for the listeners and the viewers.
Definitely. Especially, everything you've told us is brilliant. The funny bit you started with, now the serious bit, much appreciation.
That's all right.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
to help.
Thank
you. My mum was an inspiration for my brother Howard, for my brother Paul and myself. She was born with a club foot. She had very few friends, and people would make fun of her at school. She was bullied and had to leave, be the last one to leave. My grandmother took her to the hospital, and the doctor said, "Don't worry, Mrs. Cohen, your daughter Rosie will make friends wherever she went," and she did. So she went through that. She was born with a club foot. She left school at 14, which was normal in those days. There was none of this going to Oxford University or Cambridge. You were from Whitechapel, you had to know your place, straight into the factory. But she endured a very difficult marriage, divorce. She had mental health problems and was in hospital, and she even fought cancer. She was a battler, and she said to me once, "It's 99% down to you and 1% other people. So you've got to fight." The doctors told her, as I said in an earlier transmission, Mrs. Stroman, we're very sorry, we're going to have to give her a cesarean. She said, oh no, you bloody won't. I gave one push and out you came. And that was me. And that's what I encourage everybody to do. Give one extra push and keep fighting. When people tell you you can't do it, you look them in the face and say, yes, I can do it. You might see things out there that are wrong. Well, you go out there and you do all your best to correct it. You be the one that people will remember. When she died in the home, normally she ended up in a nursing home. The manager of the home said, normally when I go round and tell people someone's died within the home, it's a very big home, Nightingale House in Clapham South, people don't tend to react. But when I told that your mum died, they said she was a marvellous woman. She was a very kind woman. She was what we call a Gittiner Shummer, a good soul. Even when it was pouring with rain, she would go out and get newspapers, buy the newspapers for the shops for some of the residents on her floor who couldn't get out. And but she had a wonderful sense of humour. The nurses caught her one time that she had a friend called Ike, and Ike was on the table, and this woman had constipation on the other on his table, and Ike said, you can have some of my tablets and let's have an exchange, and I'll have some of your tablets. I'm on the constipation ones.
Oh boy.
And that would have suited my mum down to the ground. Yeah.
Oh, Andy, thank you again. Your mum, basically, your mum was beautiful.
Yeah, she was she'd come in.
Very, very encouraging.
She was a great character, and people recognised that she would go out of her way to help people. She would say to me as a child, Andrew, go and see how Baylor is. Go and see how Rosie Butcher is. Go over the road and run an errand for me and go round the corner to Harry's. Here's the money. Go and say, go round there and tell him I need this, that, and that. She liked her cigarettes, and she's tell him I'll pay him at the end of the week. And everything was on the slate in those days because people didn't have it. But there she was. She was. My Uncle Jack, he said after my mum died, he said, I couldn't have asked for a better sister. And the nurse at Hordle Ward, Sarah, on Royal Marsden Cancer Ward, said, they don't make them like your mother anymore. They broke the mould. She was a very, very special person.
Powerful story.
Thank you.
Powerful story.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
That's all right.